The night was heavy, the air thick with an eerie stillness that seemed to blanket the ancient city of Troy. Silence hung in the air, a silence so profound it felt almost tangible, as if the city itself was holding its breath. The Trojans slept soundly, their dreams filled with victory and the hope of a peaceful future. They had fought bravely and believed their struggles were finally over. For 10 long years they had defended their city against the invading Greeks. Each day had been a test of their endurance, their courage, and their will to survive. The weary defenders had finally driven the enemy away, or so they thought. Their bodies ached from the relentless battles, but their spirits were lifted by the prospect of peace. All that remained was a single wooden horse, an enormous structure that stood as a silent sentinel in the heart of the city. A gift of peace, they believed. A token of surrender from the Greeks, a symbol of their victory. Little did they know their doom lurked within. The horse was not a gift, but a cunning trap, a masterpiece of deception. As the massive gates swung open, the city of Troy prepared to welcome its final dawn. The first light of daybreak cast long shadows, hinting at the darkness that was to come. The Greeks had vanished from their camps, leaving behind an eerie emptiness. It was as if they had simply disappeared into thin air. They had left behind a magnificent wooden horse, a structure so grand it seemed almost otherworldly. It towered over the Trojans, a symbol of their supposed surrender. It towered over the Trojans, a symbol of their supposed surrender. The citizens of Troy marveled at its craftsmanship, unaware of the sinister purpose it served. The Trojans were eager to celebrate. They believed the war was over, that they had triumphed over their enemies. They were blind to the danger that lurked within. Unseen, deep within the horse's hollow belly, a select band of Greek warriors lay hidden. These warriors, hand-picked for their bravery and skill, waited in silence. Among them was Odysseus, the cunning strategist. His mind was sharp, his resolve unbreakable. He and his men waited, their muscles tense, their hearts pounding. The fate of Troy rested on their shoulders, and they knew the weight of their mission. The fate of Troy rested on their shoulders. They were determined, ready to strike when the moment was right. As night fell again, the city of Troy celebrated. The streets were filled with laughter and music, the air thick with the scent of roasted meats and spiced wine. They feasted and drank, unaware of the silent threat in their midst. The revelry reached its peak, the Trojans lost in their joy and triumph. When the revelry reached its peak, Odysseus and his men slipped out from their wooden prison. They moved with the stealth of shadows, their hearts pounding with anticipation. They opened the city gates, unleashing the fury of the waiting Greek army. The Greeks stormed Troy with a ferocity that left the Trojans reeling. They left nothing but ruins and despair in their wake. The city of Troy, once a beacon of strength and resilience, was reduced to ashes. The legend of the Trojan Horse would be remembered for centuries, a tale of cunning and betrayal that changed the course of history. The story of Troy is a tale of love, war, and the fickle whims of the gods. It is a narrative that has captivated the imagination of countless generations, filled with larger-than-life characters and dramatic twists of fate. This epic saga begins not on the battlefield, but in the realm of the divine, where the seeds of conflict were sown by the gods themselves. It begins long before the Trojan War, with a curse that would haunt the city for generations. The origins of this curse are shrouded in myth and legend, but its impact was very real, setting the stage for the epic conflict that would follow. The city of Troy, with its towering walls and proud citizens, was destined to become the focal point of a divine drama. It all started with a golden apple, a seemingly insignificant object that would ignite a firestorm of jealousy and revenge. This apple, inscribed with the words, "For the fairest," was a gift from Eris, the goddess of discord. Her intention was to sow chaos among the gods, and she succeeded beyond her wildest dreams. Zeus, the king of the gods, found himself in a predicament. As the ruler of Mount Olympus, he was often called upon to mediate disputes among the gods, but this time, the stakes were unusually high. The golden apple had sparked a fierce rivalry among 3 of the most powerful goddesses, each of whom believed she was the rightful recipient. Eris, the goddess of discord, had thrown a golden apple marked "For the fairest" among the goddesses. Her actions were calculated to create strife, and she watched with satisfaction as the seeds of discord took root. The goddesses, Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite, each claimed the apple as their own, setting the stage for a divine contest that would have far-reaching consequences. Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite each claimed the apple as their own. Their rivalry was intense, and none of them was willing to back down. Each goddess believed she was the fairest, and each was determined to prove it. The dispute threatened to disrupt the harmony of Mount Olympus, and Zeus knew he had to find a solution. Unwilling to choose between them, Zeus declared that a mortal man would decide. He knew that any decision he made would anger two of the goddesses, and he could not afford to alienate such powerful allies. By passing the responsibility to a mortal, he hoped to avoid the wrath of the goddesses and maintain peace on Mount Olympus. He chose Paris, a prince of Troy. Paris was known for his fairness and judgment, and Zeus believed he would make an impartial decision. However, Paris's choice would have consequences far beyond what anyone could have anticipated. His decision would set in motion a chain of events that would lead to one of the most famous wars in history. Each goddess offered Paris a bribe. Hera promised him power, offering to make him the ruler of all Asia and Europe. Athena offered him wisdom and skill in war, promising to make him the greatest warrior the world had ever seen. Each offer was tempting, but it was Aphrodite's bribe that ultimately swayed Paris. Aphrodite, however, tempted him with the most beautiful woman in the world, Helen, wife of King Menelaus of Sparta. She promised Paris that Helen would be his if he chose her as the fairest. Blinded by her beauty and the allure of such a prize, Paris made his choice. Blinded by her beauty, Paris chose Aphrodite as the fairest. His decision was driven by desire, and he did not consider the consequences. By choosing Aphrodite, Paris set in motion a series of events that would lead to the downfall of his city and the loss of countless lives. He accepted Helen as his prize, unaware that his decision would seal Troy's fate. The abduction of Helen was not just a personal affront to King Menelaus. It was a violation of the sacred bonds of marriage and hospitality. This act of betrayal would ignite a war that would engulf the entire Greek world. The abduction of Helen was a grave offense. It was an act that could not be ignored or forgiven. The Greeks saw it as a direct challenge to their honor and their way of life. The call to arms was sounded, and warriors from all over Greece answered the call, ready to fight for their honor and reclaim what had been taken from them. It sparked outrage throughout Greece. The leaders of the Greek city-states convened to discuss their response. They knew that a united front was necessary to confront the might of Troy. The decision was made to launch a massive expedition to retrieve Helen and punish those who had wronged them. King Menelaus, determined to avenge his honor, assembled a vast army. He called upon the greatest warriors of Greece, including Achilles, Odysseus, and Ajax, to join him in his quest. The Greek forces were formidable, and their resolve was unshakable. They were prepared to lay siege to Troy and fight until Helen was returned. He launched 1,000 ships to reclaim his wife and punish Troy. This monumental fleet, known as the Achaean Armada, set sail across the Aegean Sea bound for the shores of Troy. The stage was set for a conflict that would become legendary, a war that would be remembered for its heroism, its tragedy, and its enduring impact on the world. The Trojan War was more than a conflict between mortals. It was a battleground for the gods themselves. Their rivalries and alliances played out on the plains of Troy. Their interventions shaped the course of the war. Aphrodite, true to her word, protected Paris and Helen. She shielded them from harm and ensured their love endured. Hera and Athena, however, were filled with fury at Paris's judgment. They sided with the Greeks, aiding them in battle and plotting Troy's downfall. The gods' involvement was not limited to mere support. They appeared on the battlefield in all their divine glory. They unleashed their wrath upon their enemies. They turned the tide of battle with their powers. The Trojan War became a cosmic stage for their personal vendettas. The Trojan War raged for 10 long years, a conflict that has been immortalized in epic poetry and ancient texts. This war was not just a battle for territory, but a clash of cultures, ideologies, and the very essence of heroism. It was a brutal and bloody conflict that tested the limits of human endurance. The warriors on both sides fought with a ferocity that was unmatched, their weapons clashing in a symphony of destruction. The battlefield was a place of chaos, where the line between life and death was razor thin. Heroes rose and fell on both sides, their names etched in legend. These were men of extraordinary courage and strength, whose deeds would be remembered for millennia. They were not just warriors, but symbols of their people's hopes and dreams. The war saw acts of great courage, cunning and sacrifice. Warriors risked everything for glory and honor, performing feats that seemed almost superhuman. Their bravery was matched only by their willingness to lay down their lives for their comrades and their cause. But it was also a story of betrayal, loss, and the terrible cost of war. Friends turned against friends, and the bonds of loyalty were tested to their breaking point. The aftermath of each battle left the ground littered with the fallen, a grim reminder of the price of conflict. On the Greek side stood Achilles, the invincible warrior, whose rage knew no bounds. He was a force of nature on the battlefield, his mere presence enough to strike fear into the hearts of his enemies. Yet, his anger was both his greatest strength and his greatest weakness. His prowess on the battlefield was unmatched. Achilles could cut through enemy lines with ease, his spear and shield moving with deadly precision. He was a hero in the truest sense, a warrior whose name would be remembered long after the war had ended. Yet even he was not immune to fate. Despite his near invincibility, Achilles had a fatal flaw, his heel. This vulnerability would ultimately lead to his downfall, a poignant reminder that even the greatest heroes have their weaknesses. His death from an arrow to his heel marked a turning point in the war. The loss of Achilles was a devastating blow to the Greeks, shaking their morale and altering the course of the conflict. It was a moment that underscored the fragility of life, even for the mightiest of warriors. Defending Troy was Hector, the noble prince, a skilled warrior and a respected leader. He was the heart and soul of the Trojan defense, a man who fought not just for glory, but for his city and his loved ones. Hector's bravery was a beacon of hope for the Trojans. He fought bravely for his city and his family. Hector's dedication to his people was unwavering, and he stood as a symbol of resistance against the Greek onslaught. His love for his family and his city gave him the strength to face overwhelming odds. His death at the hands of Achilles was a tragedy for the Trojans. It was a moment of profound loss, not just for his family, but for the entire city of Troy. Hector's fall signaled the beginning of the end for the Trojans, a harbinger of the doom that was to come. It foreshadowed their impending doom. The death of Hector left the Trojans vulnerable, their greatest defender gone. The city of Troy, once a bastion of strength, now stood on the brink of destruction. The war was ultimately decided by a trick, a testament to Odysseus's cunning. The Greeks, unable to breach the walls of Troy through sheer force, turned to deception. Odysseus, known for his cleverness, devised a plan that would change the course of history. The Greeks built a giant wooden horse, seemingly a peace offering. This horse was a masterstroke of strategy, a gift that played on the Trojans' hopes for an end to the war. It was a symbol of peace that concealed the seeds of their destruction. The Trojans, unaware of the trap, wheeled the horse within their city walls. They believed the war was over, that the Greeks had finally given up. Little did they know the horse was filled with Greek soldiers ready to strike at the heart of Troy. Under the cover of night, Greek warriors emerged from the horse's belly, opening the gates to their comrades and sealing Troy's fate. The city that had withstood a decade of siege fell in a single night, its walls breached not by force but by guile. The fall of Troy was a tragic end to a war that had seen both heroism and heartbreak in equal measure.